Let's talk some conference realignment. Colorado, Arizona to the Big 12. Let's think macro, big picture. Can there be three big conferences for the long term or just two? I think you and I both agreed that the Big 10 and the SEC would be like the AL/NL in baseball. Nowadays, you've got the Big 12 that's not going away. And if they pick up Colorado and Arizona, it's significant gets in terms of they're somewhat regional, but they're also good TV markets. So can there be three big conferences for the long term or just two? How does that shake out? What's better for the SEC? What's better for the SEC members? Your thoughts? Because the Big 12, credit them, they are putting up a fight.
They are. I think there's room for three now because I think both the SEC and the Big Ten have gotten caught making some missteps the past year or two. And I think we're seeing that now. We're seeing that Greg Sankey had I've questioned Greg Sankey's leadership to a certain degree. And I'm definitely questioning what Kevin Warren did with the Big Ten, signing contracts and not realizing there were stipulations that would violate the contracts he signed with the TV networks. And I think the Big 12, the Big 12 is their new commissioner. I forget, he was a former sports agent, right? And he is very forward thinking. He understands that he has a lesser product to sell. And his commitment is to making the product more entertaining in other ways because of that. That's why they're going to try some things that aren't going to work. But the fact that they're trying tells me that he's trying to think creatively. I don't think the football games in Mexico is going to work. I don't. I applaud the effort, quite honestly. And I think you're seeing with the Big 12 a more aggressive effort to not just go for the bigger brands, not just rest on the laurels, but to say, okay, how do we make the brands we have, how do we make them more entertaining in a certain way? And I think that actually is going to play well in the future.
Will we see, whether it's the Big 12 or whatever remains out of the Pac-12, 10-8, will we see somebody do goofy stuff like the XFL? I was wondering this last night during a battle of insomnia before our 3:30 a.m. production meeting. Will we see anybody try goofy stuff? Will we see somebody why not? I mean, there's no NCAA. So what if one of the changes I liked with this XFL and other things that they did is instead of the onside kick, since you really don't have an onside kick anymore because the rules on kickoffs, one of the things that I did like is you have to convert a 4th and 15 from your own 30 as a possible way to get an extra possession. Could we see the Big 12 or the Pac-10, 8-6, 14-12, whatever the heck they end up being? Could we see somebody do something goofy, kind of like, this is before your time, but ABA style? The ABA had the three-pointer. The ABA had other things. They had the pretty ball. They had all this other stuff that made them more exciting and made them relevant and eventually got them included into NBA expansion. Could we see any of that from a Big 12 or Pac whatever?
Well, at this point, let's be clear. It's a Big 12. If Colorado and Arizona join the Big 12, Pac-12 is dead. They can't get a TV deal now.
Right. But if they somehow cobbled things together, would it be in their best interest or would it seem circus silly?
Some of it will be circus silly, but some of it will work. I think there's going to be some creative ideas that will work. Now, look, I'll be honest. Some things will seem like good ideas at the time that were terrible ideas. When the XFL started and they had the whole place the ball at midfield and two players had to fight over it, I actually loved that idea until a season-ending injury happened.
Yeah, but it only took like the first weekend. A guy dislocated his shoulder.
Yeah, so but that's the thing. There are going to be things that, like, I've always liked the idea of if you can kick it through the goalpost on a kickoff, you get an extra point. Like, that's another point for you. If on a kickoff the ball goes through the goalpost, it's an extra point for your team. But like little things like that, I think they will. And I think this is why, by the way, I pulled up his name. The Big 12 commissioner is Brett Yormark. He was with Rock Nation. By the way, he took over NASCAR. He was head of marketing for NASCAR in 98. And I don't know if people remember because NASCAR's completely fallen off the map, but NASCAR in the early 2000s seemed like it was really going to start competing with the NFL and Major League Baseball.
It was monstrous. Monstrous.
Yeah. Yes. And that was when he was in charge of marketing. So this guy knows what he's doing with the Big 12. And I think he knows their second fiddle. Their payouts from the new TV deal is in the high 40s, I think low 50 millions. Guys, that gets close to SEC and Big Ten payout levels, even though it's nowhere near as valuable of a brand. So I think you're going to see the Big 12 try to use creativity to try to catch up with the Big Ten and the SEC. And that might keep them afloat. Now, the wild card is, I think the Big 12 is going to gobble up a lot of the Pac-12 teams. The wild card is what's going to happen when the ACC inevitably collapses, which is going to happen in short order. And the Pac-12 is going to collapse too. You're going to have a hodgepodge of teams that everybody wants. And I don't know if the Big Ten and the SEC are going to try to expand it like 20 or 25 teams at that point. And I don't know if there's room for 3 conferences if the Big Ten and the SEC each have 25 teams. That just seems like a lot. But maybe there is. Maybe there is room for 3 mega conferences.
Okay, so I want to run down as we talk conference realignment, because there's a couple of programs in here that I would like to see be able to make the jump from the group of 5 teams to the Power 5 group. And I think there's going to be some opportunity there for teams to be able to do so. So let me throw some of these at you, and you tell me if they're good Power 5 teams or not. Because right now, let's face it, being in the group of 5 every year, you're going to, whereas Tennessee or South Carolina or whoever can look at this upcoming playoff era and say, hey, you could go 9-3 and still make the playoffs, still win a national championship. Well, these group of 5 teams aren't on the same playing field. I mean, they're going to have to go pretty close to undefeated. They're going to have to make noise to get attention over the other group of 5 teams. So there is a huge challenge that they have to face that the Power 5 teams don't have to face. So we have a ranking of the best group of 5 teams of the playoff era. And I want to run through some of these and ask you a double question. One, could they one day become a Power 5 team? And 2, should they? Should they even hold up hope for that? So we've got Cincinnati, Houston, UCF, and BYU. They're in the Power 5. And I want to take a look at some other programs, if we can, that are in that running. So is there any other one team right now that you look at and you say to yourself, that needs to be a Power 5 team? They have done enough outside of Cincinnati, Houston, UCF, and BYU.
Yes, and I've been screaming this to the high heavens, particularly now if the Pac-12 wants to stay afloat, this is the move they make. San Diego State, because there's no Power 5, there's no market right now in San Diego. USC and UCLA are the LA markets. And UNLV. Guys, pro teams are relocating to Vegas for a reason. I actually think the Big 12 is making a mistake. Now, I would add, I think UNLV in the Power 5 has more valuable brand than either Arizona team. I think that's an underrated brand. A lot of kids like to go to UNLV because you get to go to college in Vegas. And with sports gambling taking off, I think UNLV is just a low-key, very underrated Power 5 potential program.
Let me throw some other ones at you that have had success recently. Navy, 11-win team in 2015. I don't think that's sustainable.
I don't either.
I think they got a pretty special thing going on anyway, right?
And they're never ever going to recruit kids who go there to primarily play football. They go there for other reasons, which
agreed.
We respect, but yeah, no.
Agreed. Portions of the program brought to you by Vassy Lawn and Garden. Man alive, it's worth the drive. Vassy Lawn and Garden, whether it's commercial, industrial mowers from Nashville, Knoxville, Chattanooga, make the drive to Cleveland, Tennessee with their buying power. They can save you a ton of money, thousands or tens of thousands of dollars. Toro, count on it. Memphis, your hometown, back in 2019, it looked like they were going to be really, really relevant for a long time. Had a good run of offensive coaches. And now we're kind of, what do you think of Memphis? Could they ever make the jump?
It's not where Memphis is relative from now to 2019. The issue with Memphis is what they did in the 90s. Because if you remember, Memphis was on par with Louisville and Cincinnati. Well, Louisville and Cincinnati, even though all 3 were basketball schools, but you know this, Louisville with hiring Howard Schnellenberger. Louisville had a 25-year plan to become a football school first. And they spent a lot of time and effort doing that. And so did Cincinnati. Memphis decided, I kid you not, this was R.C. Johnson, the incredibly stupid athletic director from the time, said, we're going to be a basketball school first, And the way we'll get our football revenue is we'll schedule these games against all these other SEC teams who have fan bases in Memphis. So then we can have people come to the games when they play Memphis, but we don't really care about football. And then in the 2010s, they decided to invest in football. But guess what? It's too late because you have these other programs, Houston, Louisville, Cincinnati, who have been investing in football for 25, 30 years now and are way ahead of the curve. So I think because of that, I don't think Memphis can make the jump now. I think they were way too late to the party.
Not fair. Western Michigan, good season in 2016. You stop me when you think this should be a Power 5 team. And as far as other programs, Coastal Carolina?
No. Just being good at the group of 5 level is not enough to be Power 5. You have to prove that you have resources that make you sustainable and bring in revenue at the Power 5 level. Coastal Carolina and Western Michigan aren't going to ever be that. Ever. That's never going to happen.
So if we come to the point where it's just not going to happen, if you're a Power 5 team, you're not going to make the jump. We've seen the Cincinnati's, Houston's, UCFs, and BYU. They've made it. Are we at the point? I mean, the train is leaving the station as far as conference realignment, and it's leaving dad blame fast. And I don't know that you can get on board at this point in the game as of early June 2023.
I think there are 5 schools that can. There are 6 schools, I think, that can maybe more, maybe 7 that could roughly get in there. I mentioned San Diego State and UNLV. I think Colorado State's an underrated brand. I mean, I know Colorado's there, but Colorado State's actually a really underrated brand for its level.
Sure.
And then east of the Mississippi, it's a TV market. So South Florida, UCF's already there. USF could be there because they're in Tampa. Temple, UConn, even though UConn has been vacillating, and then after that, I will say Memphis and Tulane because the Memphis market and the New Orleans markets are valuable markets, and somebody might be interested in those. Not the SEC because the SEC already has the Memphis and New Orleans markets, and they don't need a team there to have those markets. But you might see the Big 12 go for those.